What do you want to talk about, Mr. Perry?
Um, I think we need to hit it on the nail on a few things.
Hit it on the nail.
Dude, too many of these non-alcoholic beers got me thinking a little funny over
There's a
here.
little bit of a placebo effect that happens sometimes if I'm drinking them and I drink like a couple. I'm like, wait, am I drunk or not? It's kind of funny. Jordan
You know what?
Jordan is
Jordan got hungover after drinking like 6 of these things,
well,
dude.
I drink 6 of anything, you're gonna get fucking hungover.
That's very true. Because there is...
Imagine drinking 6 Coca-Colas.
Yeah, but... dude, this only has 45 calories.
Yeah, we should get Bill on the podcast. He's a fucking cool ass dude. We should do a podcast with Bill and then do a tour of the brewery here in San Diego.
Yeah, and then he can drop off a bunch of cases.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Now, today we're going to talk about Bump Coffees, coffee, how we get coffee, that whole process. A lot of people, when we kind of explain the roasting and kind of that coffee comes green and all these things, what shade-grown coffee is, I think we should kind of educate people a little bit on that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the coffee industry, it seems pretty mysterious. And I think the general story that people like coffee companies tell is like this whole, travel to the coffee farms, meet with the farmers, like bring the coffee back in their bag, like on the
Well, I think a
on the
lot of
bush
people,
plane or something.
a lot of people saw what's that guy from Dangerous Coffee or whatever?
Dangerous Grounds, yeah.
Or he would
Carmichael
go and he would
from La Colombe.
take a little roaster and like a stack of cash and give it to somebody and like make it like a drug deal and then get coffee and put it in his suitcase and bring it back and then somehow roast like 1,000 pounds of it. Like that's not.
I mean,
that's not how we do it. Let's just put it that way.
that does happen,
For
I
sure.
would think, but a lot of the time, most coffee companies are probably using an importer that has relationships with farmers in, a specific country or a couple different countries, and they can kind of aggregate a bunch of different, like a variety of coffees, and then do all the legwork in terms of all the paperwork, certifications, all that bullshit, and then the coffee lands in the U.S. and then roasters will have access to it. I think that's the majority of what people are doing, which is smart because to go into an area, to a coffee farm, cold, not know anything about an area, you're basically banking on the fact, like hoping that the coffee farmer themselves has everything set up, is working with an importer that you can, buy coffee from. Or you're going to have to set all of that up yourself, and there's a lot of...
I mean, ideally,
a lot of paperwork
we would
to
love
do.
to control the whole thing of like being the ones that do all that, but that is a massive thing to set up.
Yeah, it's a lot of...
It takes a lot of work, a lot of steps, all that. But there's also a thing of kind of having the in with these coffee farmers because there is a trust situation that goes on. I've had multiple situations at some farms, not a situation in the sense that because we were friends of somebody and they knew that we were a real business and we weren't just trying to go down there and exploit them and be like, let me buy all your shit and take everything from you so I can go sell it for 12 times the margin. It was like, let me learn your culture. I want to have a beer with you. I want to hang out. Then they're like, yeah, let's do business. Like there is an aspect of that is also important.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I think that's just part of the fun.
Oh, that's all
But,
right there.
You definitely need to... There's a component that you have to have in place, which is the import-export situation, and it's fine. It's necessary that you have that, so it's not bad that people... I mean, we use an importer that will, taste coffees from and buy coffee from. We have multiple importers that we work with. Even the farm that I've gone to in Nayarit, they actually are the importer, but they also organize all the communities in a given area to be able to export the coffee. But what they've done is they've tried to, because they're organizing and exporting the coffee, they control a little bit more than normal, I would say. And so they've been able to change the philosophy and how this certain areas growing coffee and really educate the farmers on shade grown coffee and sustainability and all those awesome things. And improve the quality of the coffee, which then in turn makes the farmers more money. The year that I had actually gone to this farm up in El Quaranteno outside of Tepic, the Grupo Terreno had given back like $70,000 to the communities, which is a lot of fucking money, especially when you live in a fucking tiny little shack house, like up in the hills, you know? So that was like a huge thing for me when I heard that, and you know, it all checks out. I was there for 2 days with these people, and they just do such a cool job. So, you know, we love working with them. It's amazing to be able to go and experience their lifestyle for a day, just see how hard they work and how much they care about producing good coffee. You know, some of those farms up there are like, you know, 2, 3, 4 hour mule ride into the actual farm. So I didn't get to do that, unfortunately, but just to give you a little bit of context of like where coffee comes from, it's not like it just grows like on the side of the road and it's easy to harvest and the shit is hard. It's like usually on a hillside, takes a long time and a good amount of people to get all the coffee off of the trees at the right time.
Yep.
You have to deal with the rain, make sure shit isn't getting wet so that it, you know, we don't want it to grow mold, any of that kind of shit. So a lot goes into it. But I guess to get back to kind of how people do it, you know,
Kind of the layout.
yeah, there's basically there's like, you know, coffee roasters, and then there's importer, exporter group of people.
The farm to cup, Trev.
Oh yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, farm to cup. Okay. I just think it doesn't give credit to the people that are doing a lot of the legwork. Like the import export is so critical, and I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think a lot of coffee roasters are actually owning that process or that business right there in the middle. It's just them and then the farmer, so they're missing the whole part in the middle. And that's the most critical part in terms of getting the coffee to the U.S.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit that goes on with that. You know, a lot of countries don't have that infrastructure. Like Ecuador doesn't really have that infrastructure that I actually didn't even know, but I found out this year when through Edgar, I had met this guy down in Ecuador, just basically through the internet with our other buddy Edgar from Lima, put me in touch with him. Started talking to him about some of his coffee. He was telling me what he had left from this last year's harvest. He only had like 30 pounds of his estate blend honey process, and he only had like another 20 pounds of his Typica that they process naturally. And so 50 pounds total basically is like what he was willing to part with. But right up, even before we got to that, he would basically was like, dude, I can't really deal, or nor do I want to deal with the U.S. in terms of putting my coffee on a ship, like in a container to get up there. It's like, we're just not really set up for that. So I ended up having to fucking wire this dude the money for the coffee after we chatted a little bit, and I think he felt comfortable selling us the coffee. I chatted a little bit, and then I had to wire him money, and then once he got the money, so I've never met this person in person. I wired him, you know, thousands of dollars, and then basically was hoping and praying that he was going to ship the coffee.
That we were going to get coffee.
And he shipped it, you know, I think it was like FedEx or DHL or something.
One of the weird ones.
Yeah. And then the coffee showed up, and I was like, oh, thank God. But, you know, we still haven't sold it. We're waiting to release it with our new website, and this is going to be like a really cool coffee. But it was actually, how did I say all that stuff about this importer exporter thing? It was like that process right there didn't use like an importer exporter. Like he went down to the I don't know, the post office or whatever in Ecuador and like filled out all the custom stuff and sent it to me. But
that's at 30 pounds.
Yeah.
When you're trying to move pallets, which are, you know, 1,000 pounds, it takes that process. Like, of course, the farmers are super important, and the roasters, and then the people who are making it.
Everybody's important.
Yeah.
Everybody
I think the forgotten piece is how are we going to get that taste here? Well, there's a whole world of importing exporting all that goes on. That's pretty insane.
Well, the one thing that I've learned, like dealing in business stuff in, like, for say Mexico or something like that, it's like there's so much trust that goes on. A lot of stuff is like a handshake. You're gonna do something, I'm gonna do something, and you kind of have to do something before I'm gonna do something. Like, you have to send me money before you get, like, I don't know. In the U.S., a lot of our stuff is, you know, within contracts, and everything's kind of like legalized, right? Like, you get everything done through a contract. Well, that doesn't always happen south of the border. So there's a lot of trust on their part and our part in terms of, you know, we're not going to fuck them over. They're not going to fuck us over. It's in both of our best interests to, you know, follow through on our end of the deal, so that we can continue to make money together in the future. But yeah, it's just interesting as an American going down and you know, trying to do business in a foreign country where whatever contracts you do get are in Spanish, or, you know, like, you're talking legal verbiage in Spanish. I don't know. That's pretty tricky. You definitely need a translator. You need
More
a
than a translator, you need
a lawyer,
yeah,
and a
lawyer
translator to
translator.
do that kind of stuff. But yeah.
So going from, we have the farms, they grow the coffee, we now get it, the importer, we, like, if it's an area we visited or a place we want to know about, we communicate with our importer. We've been dealing with now for 9 years. At the beginning, it was kind of a learning experience between us and them of what kind of coffees we like. They educated us on regions. Then we went and did our own travels, found out some other places, and then together we were like, hey, I was here and I had this coffee from this thing. Do you guys have access to that? Do you have access to this? Can you get coffee from this person? Let me put you in contact with this farmer or this co-op, see if you can get it for us, and so on.
Yeah, that's the kind of the nice thing with working with, like, such a well-established importer, that even if they don't work with a coffee grower right now, they have the potential to.
Yeah.
And it's because they have so much going on around the world, we can usually kind of tack on some of our.
I mean, they have a post in every single coffee producing country, essentially. It's just sometimes it might be on the other side of the country, so it'll take fucking a month on a pickup to get there, and then from there, then, you know, you got to wait your turn. But that's part of the import process of us finding our coffees. Then our importer gets it here to us.
Yep.
And we take that coffee and what do we do with
We
that?
roast it.
We roast that sucker up on our.
Well, we'll get like, if we haven't tasted the coffee first, we'll get samples.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, roast that up in a little, like, mini roaster that we have. We really just kind of roast it just to see what kind of potential there is. And then, you know, if we both feel like, all right, this is going to be something good, or it could be something good, it doesn't have any of these, like, red flags. Like, sometimes you can tell if coffee's, like, from a year, like, before. It'll have kind of this faded flavor. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but you can tell. You'll be able to notice. Or if it's just, like, low grade coffee that maybe was grown in, like, the lower hills and not up higher elevation, or if it was grown out in the full sun rather than being in the shade. That kind of stuff you can kind of tell by the flavor, but then also you sort of verify with your importer or the grower themselves and say, hey, you know, how is this being grown? Like, what elevation in the trees or not in the trees, yada, yada, yada. And kind of just hone in. And that just takes time, you know, like reading a lot, going and experiencing these farms, watching videos on growing coffee and tasting a lot of coffee, like just tasting a shit ton of coffee so that you have reference points for, like, what you think is good, but then also what other people think is good, and then what wins awards. So all these things kind of come into play when we're choosing coffees, and I think we do a really good job of choosing coffees. We try to make our coffee. We try to choose coffees that are going to taste as good as any craft coffee roaster in the country. And I honestly can say that I think we could compete with anybody. if we would ever do that, I don't know. I think we will have other things that we would rather do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sample, taste,
And it does help. It does help with our roasters doing, or not our roasters, our importers also doing their own cupping, visual inspections, like you name it, everything. And over the years, I've spent time up with our importer and had done cuppings with them to see how they do all that stuff and how they're looking at the coffees before they recommend to us. And you get a relationship with them, and so they know not even to bring something up that, because they know our taste, they know what we want, and that's a cool thing that they don't just bring it here, put on a thing, and say, I don't know, try this one, here, good luck, and then you buy a bag and it tastes like shit.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we've tested all these coffees, we've been getting them for years. This is this. Send you a sample. We think you'll like this. I don't think there has been one, maybe one time, but 99% of the time, it's like we get it, we taste it, and we're like, yes, this has bones, so we'll go from here, and then we roast it at our warehouse. We started roasting initially when we started the business in the farmers markets. We weren't roasting; we had somebody do that for us. We had nothing. We had enough money for some tables and a tent and a little bit of coffee, so we're buying from a coffee roaster. And then we slowly graduated into a little warehouse, little shoebox warehouse, where we picked up, I think it was a little 5 or 6 pound roaster, and we just started roasting. We didn't go to school, we didn't get any certs, we didn't do anything like that. We just kind of had our want to learn, and YouTube can teach you everything. But other than that, it's trial and error, just like running the business and everything we've done.
Learn by doing.
Yeah, it's like, okay,
It's the cowboy
I could
slogan.
read this whole thing. I could read this whole thing, or I'm just going to start roasting and pull it out and see what it tastes and start to understand. It does have, I think if you have any sort of knowledge in cooking and understanding like heat and air, like those types of things,
Yeah.
it makes like you can roast.
I think I learned how to cook off the food channel, Food Network.
1,000,000%.
Right, but did you ever take a class on how to cook a ribeye?
Hell no.
You know what I mean?
You
Well,
just
yeah.
do it.
So like our whole philosophy is probably way different than what you'll see on any other coffee YouTube channel or anything.
Nor
like
are
that.
they wrong or
Yeah,
right. It's
I don't
just
think
this is our
anybody's
way.
wrong. It's just there's different ways of doing shit. For us, we're a couple guys that like high quality shit, and rather than sitting in the classroom or spending a bunch of time kind of like locked up in a class, we just like to get after it, test all sorts of different shit, burn something, not cook it enough, light it on fire, just really understand like the extremes of every single input, and then from there now we know, and we can take what we just learned and use that knowledge in the next time we do
Yeah.
something. So yeah, I mean,
So we graduated from that small roaster in that little place. We were just roasting, and then business started picking up. Kept roasting, and it was like, all right, now we're over here 5 pounds. We're doing if I'm on it, I'm like doing maybe 20 pounds an hour. And when the volume started ramping up, man, it was like roast all day, every day. It was absolutely not sustainable. So fast forward a little bit, got a bigger warehouse, and now we have a big, beautiful San Franciscan roaster. So we get pallets of coffee delivered of all of our delicious coffees that we love and that we've worked on over the years. They come in a pallet, a burlap sack, 70-kilo bags. The coffee is green because it's been dried out, and we can get into that process and our favorite process, which is a shade-grown process.
shade grown
Yeah.
coffee. Yeah.
Or yeah. Well, a process of growing the coffee is shade grown.
Oh, nice.
That's what I meant. Get caught up a little bit.
You getting drunk.
You're getting buzzed off these upside down, whatever it is. Anyways, we can get into our shade grown coffee in a minute, but we have a warehouse. All of our good coffee's there. We roast it up fresh. We're roasting twice a week now, but everything is pretty much leaving that whole week. So everything is fresh all week. And that's been really awesome. It works out for us great. In that capacity of the San Franciscan roaster, we can do 1,000 pounds an hour, or 1,000 pounds a day. An hour would be ridiculous. 1,000 pounds a day if we really turn it on. So the capacity is there, and it allows us to not have to like bulk up like 3-4 weeks in advance to start selling stuff because we can't keep up with demand. This allows us to roast everything fresh. So if you're in the shops or if you're ordering online, everything is within that week of roast date. And yeah, that's kind of comes into the shop, and we serve it for you right here.
Yep.
7 days a week.
You want to talk a little bit about
Shade process.
Jesus Christ.
The shade grown coffee.
Shade grown coffee. Okay. So to go back to the farm and focus on that for a little bit, shade grown coffee growing in a natural ecosystem in a habitat that has its own equilibrium where birds are eating the bugs and the bugs are eating other bugs, and all of that is dying at some point and decomposing on the ground. Leaves are falling, branches are falling, there's ground cover. That is the way that we really like to see the coffee that we're buying be grown. It's better for the environment. You're not clear cutting a natural forest, and the coffee actually grows better. The coffee that's its natural environment, is growing under the top layer canopy of a jungle or forest, whatever you want to call it. So coffee does better. It performs better. The leaves are going to be much healthier, which is then going to produce much tastier coffee. You don't have to use nearly as much water because you're getting that protection from the top canopy, so the sun isn't just beating down on the ground. Because there is, plants and trees above the coffee, like I said before, those leaves and branches and that fruit is falling on the ground, decomposing, creating a really nice topsoil. Because you have the root systems from all these other plants, you have really, really nice soil structure. It's stable. It's not going to erode when there's a rainfall. And just overall, it's way better. I don't know. Is there anything else I need to say to...
No, it's just, if you think about natural coffee existing in the wild, we want to get as close to that, and the shade grown coffee is essentially untouched in a way. Of course, there is some manipulation with access to it and to help it thrive and grow a little bit better and stuff, but there's none of that craziness of just turning it into a crop field.
Yeah. The sun, like coffee grown in the full sun, is going to require you to add pesticides and fertilizers. Pesticides to keep bugs away that would normally be getting eaten by birds, and then fertilizers into the soil because there's no other nitrogen fixing types of plants. So basically, when you're planting coffee in the full sun with no other plants around, you're just continuously draining the soil of nutrients. Mm-hmm. Whereas if it was grown in a forest, in a top level, shade grown forest, you're gonna get all of the nutrients that you need in the soil. It's continuously getting replenished by all of that decomposing plant matter and animals and bugs. One thing that I've seen, probably in the last 10, 15 years it started happening has been farms that they clear cut a bunch of shit and they were growing coffee in the sun. They've actually started implementing agroforestry where they'll plant a bunch of new trees. Like a lot of times they'll use either avocado or mango or banana, and they'll plant trees every 30, 40 feet, and those trees will get huge, and then they'll provide shade, but still not the natural ecosystem. So you really kind of got to work on that. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time, and you don't really see the benefits of that for 4 or 5, 10 years, because it takes a long time for those trees to grow that big.
And a lot of that goes into the cost too. Instead of, spending the money on the coffee that's grown, and the taste and getting all that you're now spending money to kind of take care of the cost of all that extra stuff that these other farms had to do instead of just leaving it natural. And it just becomes Bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, our philosophy, I think, in life in general is just the most natural shit you can do, not putting a bunch of fake chemicals and whatnot on whatever it is. Like, I don't want to buy beef from a farm, from a, cattle lot that's just, thousands and thousands of cows stomping around on just dirt with no grass around, and they're just getting fed some fucking bullshit food, and, they're pumped full of whatever antibiotics.
RBGT or
Yeah.
whatever the hell that thing is.
I don't want that. So why would it change when we're buying coffee? No, we just like to keep it consistent. You want grass-fed beef? Well, then you probably want shade-grown coffee. Right?
Yeah, it's simple.
Yeah.
It's just a concept that, like you said, rolls through all of our life, and
Yeah.
it's like what we want. So
Yeah. Actually, so another thing too, is like the water situation. So a lot of these, farms that grow coffee just directly in the sun, they have to just use so much water, and in this period of time when we're talking about like scarcity of water, well, if coffee is like the main thing that some of these countries produce, and they have to continuously truck water in or bring water from a river or a reservoir, or they have to build a reservoir to contain water so that they can use it for the farm, that's not good. That's going to affect all sorts of watersheds, and it's going to, affect fish and everything. So like you go in there, you destroy one thing, which is the forest, but then now all of a sudden you have to destroy something else just to maintain the thing that you planted in place of that forest. So it's just, it creates more issues, in my opinion, than it's worth it. So I would just highly recommend, anytime you're buying coffee, I would try to figure out if it's shade grown or not. In our opinion, it's just the best way to go.
yeah, and that's what we like at Bump Coffee.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's shade grown coffee.
It's just toss. Drop the mic.
Don't drop these.
That is a little shade grown and a little bit about our coffee.
Like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube.
Spotify and YouTube. Thank you.